Technical Sales Engineer here at Logic, and I am your host for today's webinar. As everyone gets settled in, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat window of our webinar. We'll collect all of your questions and make sure that we address them in the final 15 to 20 minutes or so of our session today. And today's webinar will also be recorded. We'll also send out a copy of that recording along with the slide deck. So let's go ahead and get down to business. In the 1940s, the militaries of the world had a problem. I mean, fighting the Second World War had plenty of obvious difficulties, but I'm referring specifically to the problem of flight. You see, the Germans, the Japanese, the Americans, and the British all used aircraft in battle. And thanks to the discovery of radar in 1935, they also had the ability to detect approaching planes while they were still miles away. The problem here is there was no way to positively identify which planes belonged to the enemy and which planes belonged to that country's own pilots returning from combat. The Germans actually discovered that if a pilot rolled his plane as he returned to base, it would change the radio signal that was reflected back. Crude as this was, this altered radio signal was enough to help the ground crew passively identify friend from foe. Since that time, we've developed and refined the techniques of passive radio identification, and to guide you through the state of the art in 2020, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today's event, Mr. Carl Callan from Zebra Technologies. Carl has worked with Zebra's RFID and Intelligent Edge solutions as both North American Regional Portfolio Manager and Strategic Advisor. His main responsibilities consist of bringing Zebra's growing portfolio of solutions to market through partners and vertical markets. Carl is extremely well-traveled, having worked in sales management with technology and solutions companies throughout his career across 3 continents and over 40 countries. He holds a bachelor's degree from Boston College and attained his master's degree in international business at the Stockholm School of Economics. I'm pleased to give you Carl.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, Clint. Pleasure to be on this webinar. It's a good way of maybe introducing what we're working with these days. It's radio frequency identification. We've come a long way since we worked with, I guess, radar to detect airplanes and if they were rolling or not. Clint, just wanted to make sure sound check wise I'm coming through loud and clear and the screen is visible.
Yep, you're perfect.
Perfect. All right, so let's start the presentation. So I intend to cover a couple of topics here today, maybe starting off with turning off the webcam for a second so we can dedicate more of the, there we go. So we can dedicate more of the bandwidth to the presentation material, etc. So today I will attempt to give you guys a picture of where Zebra is in terms of RFID in 2020. Share with you also the vertical use cases that we're starting to see pop up. This technology, at first with passive RFID and RFID tags, was very, very focused on retail, but we're seeing a shift right into new verticals. So I'll go through that with you a little bit too. In terms of the passive systems, we're now starting as an industry to collectively call them RAIN RFID, or it's a shortening of radio frequency identification, right? RAIN. And in there, Zebra offers quite a few unique elements in terms of our solutions. First of all, broadness of portfolio.
Carl,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're
Sure.
having some difficulty seeing your screen.
Okay, let's try this. Yeah, so broadness of, can you see that, Clint?
There we go.
Perfect. Yeah, so broadness of portfolio. I'll talk a little bit about our supply strategy as well as our reader strategy as well. These are critical elements in a system, of course, in a solution. And I'll pepper in a couple of, real world examples of solutions that we're taking to market in 2020. In terms of RFID, we're also starting to see a bit of a convergence of the old technology of, or let's say the proven technology of our RFID passive with also a real-time locationing capability, which is something that we took to market last year and we're expanding into. I think that'll be interesting to many of the folks on the call today. And then I'll migrate into more of our active solutions as well. Our main focus on today's call will be the passive systems, but I'll introduce this as well. And I think, Clint, there'll be other elements to active and other activities around the active systems that you and Logic will be working together with Zebra on in the short or in the near future, rather. Okay, so maybe let's start off with where we are as an industry. So 2019 was an exceptional year for RFID, and we saw the passive tag sales go up to close to 17 billion, right? So we're talking huge volumes here. It's driven by retail. I mentioned that before, so 70% or so is retail. And of course, tagging apparel and having very good inventory control is what's driving the ROI there. And we're also seeing that, of course, similar supply chain visibility for not just retail items, but also overall for manufacturing, for warehousing, and for Zebra as well, clearly in healthcare. So it's growing at a very good clip right now because we have achieved more than 20 years of passive RFID. It started off being quite a let's call it unstable technology. The standardization took a while to get through, but now that we're, approaching our second decade, right? It's no longer the case. We have, robust and stable standards. We are starting to even brand this whole initiative and industry around our own little logo. You see it in the RFID inventory bubble above that. You'll see the R in a cloud, which is the RAIN consortium, and then we have, of course, we're following our big brother Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, etc. These logos have been around for a long time, so we're in the same category. We're getting there, right? So from our perspective at Zebra, anyway, it's a technology that we're heavily invested in, and we are going to be, of course, continuing on in our market development ways. So we're very pleased to have many of our customers or Zebra customers on the line here, and our common customers from Logic. Going into the main verticals then, so Zebra touches these verticals principally, right? So T&L, manufacturing, healthcare, retail, and government. And it really boils down to visibility, right? Having very clear visibility and also efficiencies, being able to be efficient with your data capturing. Barcodes are great, and then they have a certain limitation. We'll go through really when to use RFID throughout the presentation, and there are some use cases where of course barcoding is fantastic, and it still remains a key technology for Zebra. And as we're looking at more complex workflows, maybe better supply chain visibility, and as I mentioned before, asset tracking and locationing, that's when we can start really leveraging RFID as a technology. I'll maybe just mention the manufacturing sleeve here, since we do have a good group of manufacturing end customers on the call. Well, it's really about that smarter decision-making with real-time tracking, being able to track WIP, work in progress, product identification, shipment accuracy, receiving, asset tracking, and the product life cycle, being able to track your assets, right? So all that is fundamental while we generate the ROIs, and we've rolled out quite a few of these systems in manufacturing. You see some of the reference customers, and there's a bucket which is much bigger than that, of course, that we've also got RFID in. So we see this just as maybe the beginning. Again, 20 years within the industry. I think we're starting to see the manufacturing sleeve or vertical really starting to adopt it. 2020 has been a funny year. I think we need to use this unusual year to start maybe looking critically at our workflows, the use cases of using RFID within our operations. And I would only encourage the end customers on the call today to consult with Logic and see what we can work on together. So let's get into what Zebra does from a pure, solutioning perspective, and maybe also get into some of our secret sauce and what Zebra brings to the table together with our partners. So this might be a bit of an overwhelming slide, but it's really 3 layers of a cake. The bottom layer, or the bottom stack, if you'd like, is about our printers. So that's what we're mostly known for in the industrial space. Particularly, we have printers, but for RFID, we've developed our portfolio of RFID printers. So we now have, you could say, 1 RFID encoding printer per every single print category, right? So everything from the handheld or portable printers, rather, mobile printers, to our most heavy industrial printers, the ZT600 series. We have an RFID encoding variant of it, right? So that makes your life easier. The second part is that for for our industrial 600 series printers, we also have an upgrade kit. So if you today might have a stack of printers, or let's say you have your, a couple dozen of Zebra printers out in your operations, the 600 series, we have capabilities of being able to upgrade those. So basically future-proofed technology, and then you can add the extra encoding capability. And then we have wonderful inlays and labels, which I'll get into the specifics of that. We specialize in certain labels. We don't necessarily get into the race to the bottom in terms of the lowest cost RFID tags, but we have competitive solutions and very specialized solutions for specialized applications. Going up maybe into the next level, and I'll go through this in some more detail, we have the handheld and hands-free readers, which are foundational, really. You need these I mean, it's great to have a fixed reader system, I'll get into that in a minute, but if you don't have these foundational elements, it's kind of hard, right? Because you do, on a one-off perspective, no matter if you're in retail or if you're in manufacturing, you do need to have a handheld to augment and also help you and assist you to look for RFID tags, and also to fill out any gaps that you may have in an operation, right? So that they're really important to keep in mind, right? And then we have the Rolls-Royce, especially in manufacturing of RFID technologies, and we're talking then about our fixed readers. Some of our overhead reader systems that I'll get into today are also exceptional. We have a vast array of different antennas as well. So with that in mind, we have a very, very comprehensive portfolio. We also work within the standards, the GS1 standards that sets the kind of the specifications on RFIDs. So we have good compatibility as well with other manufacturers and other labels, etc. So that's kind of where Zebra goes in with its solutions. I'll go into, as I mentioned before, we have these inlays or tags, RFID tags that we take to market as well. As I mentioned earlier, we are not really in that race to the bottom. We do work with very specific RFID tags that provide a lot more value. So specialist applications. Just as an example, if you see at the bottom left, you'll see the silver line label, which is a very clever solution. RFID, of course, if you connect one of these tags to your a metal object or a liquid object, you typically get very poor performance. It's physics, right? By putting your antenna too close to a metal object, you kind of lose the performance of it completely. So we have a good way of doing that with the silver line tags. Also getting into the specialist tags for warehouses, we have a ZBR 4000, which provides, thanks to its footprint, etc., an excellent read capability from many different angles, as well as under optimal conditions, we have been able to get 60-foot read performance, right? So this is kind of exceptional. It's something that wasn't really available 5 years ago in RFID. So you can start imagining how the use cases start getting more and more. So that's kind of it on the labels. Going into the readers themselves, and I was alluding to some special sauce here. So if you see the green and yellow boxes, you'll see where Zebra has put a lot of effort into developing, first of all, an application-specific integrated circuit, or an ASIC, for most of our readers. This ASIC is the one that we then tune in accordance to the spec, but also do a lot of our own kind of future proofing. We're really in command of our platform here by having this ASIC giving exceptional performance, and then couple that with our NDE radio, which comes from the legacy of having been a Motorola acquisition, where we had and we still have a legacy of tremendous RF engineers, or radio frequency engineers. We've been able to combine these two to get some exceptional performances out of our hardware. So that's kind of the special sauce that we bring to the table. And then going into form factors and use cases, I think I mentioned that we have these handhelds best in class. Really, to the left are, we call them 2D presentation imagers, but they also have a small RFID radio with a read zone for up to 6 feet, which can give you that dual use. That's a use case that could be helpful in small read areas, or in retail, possibly in labs for specimen tracking or electronics assembly. In the center, then you'll see the two RFID sleds that we take to market, the RFID 2000 and 8500. These help you then with certain level of mobility and flexibility. You can use it as a mobile computer, and then you can also use it as an RFID reader when you need it. So it's not a fully dedicated solution, it's a flexible solution. Quite useful then for mostly retail, but we also see it in some warehousing and also manufacturing use cases. And if you go to the very far right, you'll see the, really the Rolls-Royce, or our best offering, which is this integrated RFID handheld line. We have two different models, the MC3330R and the MC3390R. Both of them ergonomically perfect for long shifts. Very, very good performance on reads as well, 900 plus tags per second. And then we have two variants. You can see that we have two different antennas. One that's a polarized circular antenna for wide read range from many different angles. But with that, of course, you lose a little bit of the gain or distance. So we have a good distance of around 20 feet. And then to the right, you'll see the polarized linear antenna, or Yagi antenna, which gives you a much more linear read range. So you can capture reads of up to 60 feet, right? And ideally then this would be for outdoors usage, for large warehouses, and when you're locating and reading tags in those type of environments. Okay, I think I'll just dig a little bit deeper into this, since we were on the topic of the two different types of antennas. Again, the 3330R main applications here are really to do quick cycle counting or inventories. You can imagine this being in retail, but it could also be in any other type of warehousing. You're looking for an item, you need to figure out where it is, and with our solutions, we do have what we call a Geiger counter, which is a way of identifying the tag, first of all, and then you enter that into your keypad and start aiming in different directions till you hear the beep of the RFID of the back scatter after you've excited that specific RFID tag, and then you can go and find it in a matter of seconds. We have a good video online if you guys get an opportunity to look at it too, on a sailing manufacturer, actually. They produce sails. They have a significant warehouse space. Very hard to find these individual sails, but by having that type of capability, you can do a quick identification of where it is and locationing of where it is, and then on top of that, also do a quick cycle count. So very, very versatile solution. Same goes for the data centers and offices and in healthcare, where, of course, you can do the same type of inventory management, item finding, etc. I alluded to the linear polarized antenna or the Yagi antenna. Here again, these are some images to bring it to life, right? But if you're outdoors servicing airplanes, you're looking for a specific asset that you've tagged, or if you're in a massive warehouse like the one over here, you do need that additional read range. So it's a little bit fiddlier to handle this antenna. It takes a bit of practice, but because of the read range not being as wide, it's very narrow and very directed. But you can get a handle of this, and we certainly have expertise to share with you in order of how, in terms of how you best deploy it to get really good inventory management as well as asset tracking with a handheld. So those are the real main use cases for these two different devices. So the MC3390R and the MC3330R, which I just mentioned before. Here's another use case that's kind of popping up, and I just wanted to share it with you. We've seen in the last 4 or 5 months here since lockdown, and as we're trying to get out of this, an increased interest in buy online, pick up in store. And with RFID, we've seen a number of projects here of retailers that are trying to get a much better grip on their inventory. There's of course, if you're trying to pick something up in store and you ordered it online, having that almost perfect inventory accuracy is super important for a retailer, but it could also be for a wholesaler or manufacturer. Just imagine those use cases where you think you have something on your books or in your inventory, and then the customer or the delivery service or the pickup service shows up and it's not there, right? Because you thought you had it, it said so in your systems, but you weren't able to really verify that with a quick cycle count. So what RFID does is enables that very quick cycle count, really in seconds, as opposed to doing an inventory cycle count every day by hand or by barcode. So that's really where RFID is a very strong instrument, and where we strongly recommend people using it. And in this case, we're showcasing maybe some pieces of hardware that could be useful, of course, deploying it with printers, doing code, and if you don't have what's called source tagged items, then we have a printer that allows you to print on site, a couple of readers, so you can locate the inventory as well as capture the inventory in a cycle count. All right, Clint, any questions so far? Should we pause for questions briefly?
We did get a question about the maximum temperature on some of these tags that you were talking about, specifically the mount on metal, the silver lines. And just for anybody else that had a similar question, some of these tags that we produce can absolutely reach, be deployed in environments over 200 degrees, specifically 230 degrees for a period of time. But certainly if you have custom applications like that have extreme temperatures, reach out to us, reach out to me or your Logic rep, and we can help you find suitable tags for your applications.
Nice. Yeah, great. Also, operating temperatures for most of the hardware that I'm talking about it stretches a little bit above 110, 120. So I guess the worst summer weather we can get, and then typically, it reaches around 0 or 10 over Fahrenheit, right? But we do have those specs in case you want to see them. It's pretty versatile, and we've developed these systems to be rugged and very resistant. I'll get into some of that in the next element here, which is the fixed readers. So yeah, fixed readers, very different in terms of the way fixed readers are used. We mentioned a little bit the handheld use cases of cycle counting, locating, as well as, I would say, mostly low value, or if you're just doing some occasional scans here or there and you don't need to use it maybe as a practice or as part of your workflow 100%, then we have handhelds, which are super versatile, and they are foundational. They are required because a fixed reader is great. We'll get to that in a second, but here and there you'll always need a handheld just to supplement and help your workflow. Going into the fixed readers, then they do require installation, but they also have a benefit of really being there all the time. You know, it's for fixed and frequent reads. We see typically high value and advanced processes. It reduces human error. I mean, humans are great and they can operate a handheld, but sometimes it's good to have something that's a little bit more objective. It sits over a portal or a certain dock door, possibly a choke point in your operation, and it's there and it does the job, right, 24/7. So it's really for that automation. It helps you with some advanced tracking. I'll get into a use case or two as well. And, you know, we see it also in retail, loss prevention, but also, let's say, a warehouse, you have high value items, you don't want them to disappear. So you can install fixed reader system, make sure that you tag items, and typically you'll be able to also see a reduction in losses there. This is just a basic architecture, and we work with different softwares. We have our own. I'll get into that in a moment. But you know, basically, you need for a fixed system antennas, the readers that I'll get into, a network, which is connected then to hopefully database and with a user interface and monitoring, etc. So that's really what's required. A handheld has a little bit of this already built into it, but there again, there are some softwares to really get you the business logic and the best possible business outcomes as well. So the main fixed reader that we take to market and that I would say has the best industrial application is the FX9600. So in terms of read rates, you know, we measure this and benchmark it around 1200 reads per second, which is, you know, very, very high. Good sensitivity. We keep an eye on competing systems, and the Zebra FX9600 is really, you know, best in class. We make it very versatile as well with the 4 and 8, you know, antenna port configurations. So you can see the 8 configurations or the ports here in the bottom of the screen. It's a Linux machine and very adaptable and configurable. We're starting also at Zebra to employ this as a longer term play. We will not launch a brand new reader every year. It doesn't make any sense. We will update our reader and its the reader capabilities through firmware. And I'll show an example of how we're doing that in 2020, a new firmware that we have just released, which also greatly enhances the use case in manufacturing, right? Our target market for this FX9600 is warehousing, also manufacturing, energy and utilities. And again, we see the benefits here thanks to that unique radio design that we have, high volume, high density, and throughput applications, right? So, and fairly durable. I mean, this is a robust device with good environmental spec, right? So clearly a good one for manufacturing. In terms of one of the firmware enhancements that we did this year is to make this FX9600 available to work with Allen Bradley PLCs as well as or via the Rockwell Ethernet IP protocol. And you know, basically what we've done here is made the fixed reader compatible to your you know, next to line or next to the manufacturing line or line side PLC Ethernet cabling, right? So you can now start connecting a Zebra fixed reader in this way. Basically, the way we take this to market is by the activation of a license. We have some early pilots of this, but we're very interested in seeking more. So if we can have maybe Logic reach out to you guys and customers on the call today, we'd be, you know, thrilled to try this out. If you have a PLC that needs RFID reads line side, or a production line rather that has the need for RFIDs reads line side. So this is something we should definitely work on together. We'd like to see some work there with the partners as well as with our end customers. Another reader that we bring to market as well, which is a little bit more retail specific or other maybe healthcare office specific. You can see the design's not as industrial or rugged. It's the FX 7500, very similar spec than to the FX 9600. The main benefits or the main differences are the ports. We got 4 versus up to 8 with the other one, and yeah, basically they perform very well environmentally. I would say that I would always recommend the FX 9600 over the FX 7500 in a manufacturing environment. Also, to tune these readers, we have made great progress to support our partners, but also our end customers with 1-3 RFID desktop software. So this is a software that makes it very easy to configure, tune, and adjust the reading, capabilities, the read zones, the power, etc., of your fixed readers. I'm not going to nerd myself down too much with this because this could be it's basically there's a lot to this, but I can tell you that I'm not an engineer. I got my business degree, and I never really needed to use a fixed reader in my life before I joined Zebra, but I started to really work with this technology. And with this particular application, you don't really need the engineering prowess as we had in previous tools. So basically making it easier really for a setup, and the total cost of deployment is lowered thanks to this. So we're proud to show that we have some tools of this nature. In terms of RFID antennas, again, really dependent on the use case, but we have, some rugged, some general purpose. Again, for the industrial environment or for manufacturing environments, we would always recommend the rugged ones. And, we have good environmental specs on these. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you need a big read zone or a smaller one, concentrated, long distance, near distance, near line side, etc. It really depends, but we have a good variety of antennas, and in some cases we would always recommend looking at a separate set of antennas because we are compatible with the GS1 standards. Here's just one example, the AN4440. I spoke about the operating temperatures. We're talking some extreme temperatures here, and these readers do operate, again, within certain read ranges. They are very configurable, and again, you would tune these antennas up and down with a reader depending on your needs. Here's a good example as well, choke points in a hospital. So a fixed reader, the FX7500 in this case, the silver line tag, which helps you then to affix it to something made in metal. We have these wristbands as well to track patients, and again, if you're interested in understanding where your tools, where your assets, where your patients, your maybe employees or other people are in a workflow, then this is a good setup. We have a couple of examples of hospital deployments of using RFID to track specimens as well, organs and tissue, right? So it is a useful technology from that perspective. And again, by having these fixed portals or readers above certain choke points, when things are entering or exiting certain departments or into certain patient rooms, if you're walking in with the wrong type of specimen or let's say the wrong medicine into a patient, you can even build in alerts and that type of stuff in that kind of a business logic. So, there's a lot of opportunities here, and we see some forward-looking customers as well as partners working really heavily with this RFID technology to take it to market. Also, another fixed reader element here, and this is just to illustrate how we can also track RFID tags here. Mostly parcels in a supply chain have a barcode, and that's great, but also assume that you might have, let's say, a box with perishables or other items that need item level tagging. Let's say that you have 15 unique, I don't know, could be I don't know, clothing items, etc., that you're trying to send from a manufacturing facility to a consumer. Well, you don't really have to open up the box. The tag can be tracked in this way without that line of sight. So, I mean, we have seen some examples of airports as well where the RFID tags are left on items that have been purchased in retail, and we sometimes have to scratch our heads because we get reads and POs in our proof of concepts with airlines that are higher than the containers that they were trying to track, and then we learn that, oh yeah, I mean, the baggage that they were trying to track, etc., also contains some RFID labels. So there's but of course we can filter them out, etc. But basically, this is another way of really capturing a supply chain flow, really from farm in some cases as well, all the way to table. So we're working with some blockchain technologies and partners that are specializing in that to also look and be able to look at the perishability of items throughout the supply chain, remove them if they are in the supply chain over a certain amount of time, etc. So there's many ways you can deploy a solution around RFID to track, trace, have that full scale 24/7 visibility. So recommend you thinking about this as well as you consider RFID for visibility in your flows. This is what I mentioned before. We have the benefits on the left-hand side of using barcodes. You have one-on-one, and you can scan one item at a time. You have the line of sight, which is great. You can, as long as you have a line of sight, you can read it, and then you read basically barcodes. There's no opportunity really to update it. You'll have to put a new label on, etc. And then in some cases, it can also be copied, right? So I wouldn't say these are the benefits, but this is what you have with barcodes. It's reality. And then to the right with RFID, you can scan. We spoke about the specs, right? Maybe up to 1,200 scans per second. So you have a big box full of items that you're trying to scan. If you have the right type of reader configuration and tags, you can scan them all simultaneously. You don't need the line of sight. It can be inside of a box, right? And then you can do a little bit of reading and overwriting as well on these through your system. And then there is an identifying number in every single one of these chips, right? So it's harder to copy. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's a lot of work. So again, barcodes are great, and there's use cases for that, but I also see that there are increasing reasons why we go with RFID. Another thing this year in 2020 as well, topical, is a little bit less handling of items. Human beings, so you don't have to be right on top of it. And if you have the concern maybe of spreading COVID, or if there's a concern about too much interaction of humans, or if you're getting too close to a specific item, you can always scan it at a distance with RFID. And I mean, there are good reasons for really thinking about RFID. The ATR 7000 I mentioned briefly already. It's our most advanced system for RFID. This is a combination of fixed readers and 14 antennas that are constantly reading. It's a system that you install from above, typically in a warehouse manufacturing space. Ideal height to install it at is around 12 to 18 feet. It's very lightweight system, so it doesn't, it's not too cumbersome to install. We've installed it in a number of locations already, mostly in transport and logistics, but also increasingly for tow tracking projects. So it covers around 1,200 or 1,500 square feet. You get, thanks to these, advanced antennas and this very highly pixelated beam that we can send out from these antennas, you can get very, very close proximity of the items that you're tracking. And for the first time ever, because we have the computing power in these systems, out on the edge, we get very very good tracking capabilities, really real-time visibility for the first time with passive systems. So you can just imagine how things are moving, and these ATR 7000s can track them up to 1 foot, right? So that's a new capability, and we're starting to see expanding use cases. Here's also where we would recommend a ZBR 4000. It would read many other tags as well, but we have worked specifically to get the ZBR 4000 tied in with the ATR 7000. It's a very good compatibility between the two, the tag and the reader. And finally, also, I should mention, we have a certain software that also helps with X, Y, and Z locationing to a certain degree. And by using several of these above, overhead, right, you get also that triangulation, which gives you a more accurate read. So where would you use it? Well, again, I mentioned manufacturing, warehousing. It's really to capture inventory, equipment, workers, forklifts as well. And the three verticals where this would be used would be, again, manufacturing for parts and assemblies, trolley, tracking, tools, machinery, key personnel, forklifts, etc. If you want to see and have visibility over certain elements of your workflow, it's a great tool, right? It's a very advanced, good system for that. Going into what this would look like from a configuration design, well, again, there are recommended distances between the different ATR 7000s, installing them around maybe 30-35 feet apart. They can cover up to 2.5 dock doors. Staging areas is a perfect way of using it to track pallets in and out of transportation haulage. And again, in a cross dock, we can also keep track of what's going on with the different forklifts. Work in progress could also be tracked here, totes going in and out here in the staging areas. It is operating with RFID, so heavy rack areas might not be the best place for this type of a system, but more of an open space, I would say, would be the best usage of this. And the triangulation here makes the accuracy of 2 feet, gives you very, very good visibility in your operation. Any questions around the passive RFID so far, Clint?
We did get a question in here from Rick, and he was asking about the accuracy of trying to read, say thousands of tags in a warehouse. What kind of accuracy or read rate could you expect if you're trying to do inventory inside a warehouse environment?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let me answer that from an ATR 7000 perspective. ATR 7000 is very, very good at item tracking, but I would say it's not exceptionally good at portal operations. So I would never put an ATR 7000 and hope it could capture, let's say, 500 T-shirts coming out of a pallet. I would put, a dock door reader to capture those particular items in the inventory. So I would say this is the ATR 7000 is very, very good in terms of being able to track things and know where they are on a more, let's say, aggregate level. But if we're looking at a particular, T-shirt that's in a pallet, I would not recommend that as the right type of solution. For that, the fixed readers do a really good job, and many times what you can do is combine systems, and we do see some of our partners that will have item level association at a dock door. So they will first of all capture, let's say, the 500 T-shirts, associate that with a pallet, and then once the pallet has been associated, we'll put a tag on the pallet and track that with the ATR 7000s. And then see where that's going, if it's going to a certain shelf or a certain staging area. And then from there, of course, you can, track it then more on an aggregate level.
So Carl, specifically speaking of portal applications or monitoring doorways, David asked if if you could have a fixed reader like the FX9600 actually monitor multiple antennas, or have it set up to have a single reader monitoring multiple doorways or multiple paths.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, in terms of multiple antennas, there are certain limitations, right? Because we do lose some of the radio frequency gain with long antennas, but with the right type of antenna design, etc., you can connect up to, well, with the FX7500 4 ports, but we have with the FX9600 an 8-port configuration, which can be connected to multiple antennas. So 8 antennas is the max that we offer with that. But there are limitations. They have to be a certain, the cable length cannot be more than 30 feet apart, right? But yeah, I mean, that's a very, very good use case, and we have many implementations with that type of design, right? So we'll have a reader that sits between maybe 3 or 4 dock doors with antennas going out of that particular reader. All right. Well, I'll proceed with the final element here, which is now connected to more of the active systems that we bring to the market. So we call our active RFID solutions MotionWorks. So I'll just give a quick introduction of what that is today. It's not just, let's say, hardware, but it's actually a suite of solutions that we take to market and applications. So I'll give you, first of all, a little bit of an update of where Zebra sits in terms of the Magic Quadrant. Gartner is doing benchmarking and has been doing benchmarking for many years in this space. And in terms of locationing services or solutions, Zebra has been doing a good job, I would say, over many years, being in the visionary quadrant, which is good. And then this year, for the first time, early 2020, Gartner has seen us go up the rankings into the leader quadrant, thanks to, again, our ability to execute. So there are 2 dimensions to this. There's the vision. We've always been good, visionary. Everything's been fantastic, but in terms of our ability to execute, Gartner has always said, well, Zebra, you need to put it all together now. So we've been working with interconnectivity, a lot more close collaboration between different business units, working closely with partners, and in terms of our ability to execute, it's really where it needs to be, right? So we're very pleased with this. Do read the Gartner report. It talks a little bit about the shortlisting process and what the different vendors may be good at. It's good for the audience to get an opportunity to read it. So take a picture of this barcode if you have a moment. Have a look at this, and certainly use it as you evaluate the different location solutions that you may choose. So in terms of our location solutions, then I like to show this chart sometimes. It gives you a little bit of an understanding of how we approach it at Zebra. We don't go in with a one-size-fits-all mentality. We understand that different use cases or different customers, environments, etc., will require different type of location technologies. So we start always by doing a discovery and design session with our end customers. Really important that we understand what the issues are and what we're trying to solve for. And then based on that, we do operate with a number of different tools, technologies I mentioned, and systems that can solve for these technologies, or these challenges, I should say. So just looking at the bottom axis, you'll see here that we do have different technologies that cover update rates, and that is the amount of times these active systems are communicating back. So these are not passive systems; these are active systems that are communicating on a certain cadence. We have some systems that are hourly, others that are really down to the sub-seconds. Zebra is working in collaboration with the National Football League or the NFL, and we have technologies that are helping the NFL track players, the ball, the pylons, and other movable assets out there. And we call that our DART system, which is operating under the ultra wideband. So with that, we can, for certain workflows that require that sub-second, very, very close measuring capability, that's where we would recommend the DART system. Equally then, in terms of accuracy, if you just need, a basic zone, then, maybe a passive fixed reader would be good enough. But if you're looking at closer accuracy, you would choose carefully, or it would behoove you to choose your technology based a little bit on what you're trying to solve for, or the accuracy that you need. So it's a helpful grid to just understand that these are different technologies that can be leveraged, right? And we even leverage barcodes, right, around a portal for some visual scans. NFC can be used. I mentioned passive technology. With the RTLS system that we have, I would say that with the ATR 7000, we're here somewhere. It's nicely in here. Oh, probably down here actually. Now that I think of it, sub-seconds. Okay, so that's the technology choice, right? And we see the sensing hardware, and that's, we have for our location solution slightly different technologies. It's passive, I mentioned that. We got the barcodes, but we also have WearNet, which are, a specific, more long range, lower level of communication. It's not constantly on or by the sub-second. It's more like an hourly, ping. We have the ultra wideband system called DART, as well as for outdoor, we will work with GPS technologies as well, and the BLE, right? So that information is fed into our location software, which is called MotionWorks Enterprise. And from there, we build different applications. I'm not going to go through the applications in detail today, but I'll mention that we do asset tracking here again with visual dashboards, with analytics. You can really see these things down to the closest level of proximity on a map, or CAD chart, etc. So we have some very good visual tools for that. We also have an adjacent solution called Material Flow, which also helps with line side replenishment, not connected to PLC, but more using buttons. We have this installed in many of our car manufacturers in North America, but also worldwide, really. So these are good systems for replenishment and discrete manufacturing. And then we have a yard management solution, very well kept secret. Maybe we would love to have more engagements if you have issues, or if you'd like to upgrade your yard management tool. We have a phenomenal yard management system that, again, is using some of the technologies that we mentioned, the MotionWorks Enterprise engine, and then allows you to do the proper switching, controls of your fleet as they're coming into a larger distribution center, etc. We are in 2020 expanding this a bit further with some offers that are tied to asset management. So it's for IT and tool tracking, as well as healthcare tracking. We have also connected to the ATR 7000. We have the MotionWorks warehouse as well. So the solutions or the applications will keep expanding. We do work with third-party business solutions as well from ISVs and other partners. And then, of course, we would always recommend tablets and our signature services to help with this discovery phase, implementation, integration, change management, training, etc. And that's where Logic also plays a role. Logic is one of our select partners in the MotionWorks program, and I would strongly recommend that you engage with them for these type of location solutions. But maybe we show you guys what they look like on the next webinar. So I'm going to summarize here, guys. So we are at a mature state here with RAIN Passive RFID. Remember that it's a great asset tracking technology which helps you with a lower cost or TCO, total cost of ownership, supporting a lot of your visibility needs, supply chain visibility, also having a very good sense of locationing of your items. We're also working at Zebra with these handheld solutions that are foundational. Again, cycle counting and mobile locationing is really, really important. It augments the worker in a significant way. Fixed readers, again, are really for the to automate repetitive workflows and reducing human error. The ATR 7000 system is our first really big step into passive, but now almost acting as an active system, thanks to its capabilities using the RAIN RFID. And then we have the Zebra MotionWorks active systems that I mentioned today that I think we'll cover on a future webinar as well. I would maybe say here, Clint, that from my perspective as the regional portfolio manager for RFID in North America at Zebra, I would encourage everybody on this call to think a little bit about how you could deploy RFID in your operations. And again, working closely with logic, really. Maybe you guys should organize maybe a couple of proof of concepts if you haven't tried RFID already, or do a little bit of experimentation. This year, 2020, is weird, and I know that this could be a good year to do some exploration. And then, you know, if it makes sense, then deploy it in 2021. We're seeing a lot of our end customers doing that right now. They are looking at efficiencies, automation. How do we best come out of COVID? You know, how do we get out of this weird situation? And how can we best service our customers with better throughput, our ROI, etc. We have good ROI calculators that we can also work with in order to also help you justify the investments. And again, look at where you may have some weaknesses in asset tracking, inventory automation, your supply chain visibility, or other things, right? So it's really a call to action to everyone to consider doing some RFID projects in 2020, right? Back to you, Clint.
Excellent. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time today and for walking us through, you know, this world of passive RFID. I think we've addressed all of the questions that came in from the attendees. And just as a reminder, we will send a copy of the deck and also some videos of both this recording, as well as, you know, hopefully some interesting use cases, you know, things like that Geiger counter mode. And just to reiterate what Carl said, if you have been talking about passive RFID or auto identification, and you're interested in trying to set up a proof of concept and really, you know, dig down into the feasibility of some of these projects, you know, please reach out to your Logic sales engineer or account executive, and we'd love to help you with those discussions. So I think at that point, I think we're done for the day. Thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks everyone.